Okay, hi team, welcome to your Moving Flow video. Today is going to be less stretchy and mobilizing and much more activation-y. So we're going to start off with being in a clam position. So beginner level, you can just stay open and closed. We're just trying to warm up the outside of the hip. If you can, you're going to drive your hips up and through and open and close. I'll show you this from a few angles. If you let your legs go a bit too far, you'll end up realizing there's not enough space. So try and be a bit more crunched than you think. Hand goes down, driving up onto the hip, and we're going to open and close. Like I said, you might get a few more reps in this because I just showed you multiple positions, but just for brevity, I'm going to try and stay nice and efficient, and we're going to kind of make through 2 rounds of 10 to 15 reps. So I'll switch around, I'll show you from the side angle. So knees on top of knees, driving through, opening the hip, close, open the hip. We're trying to push our hips as far forward as possible, but while keeping that pressure on the shoulder down. So same thing, I'll just show you from a slightly different angle. So hand, everything in a line, pushing through, hands flat, so just going to activate that shoulder a bit. We're getting some anti-rotation work here, so we're trying not to twist and move the upper body whilst getting some hip, glute activation stuff, kind of mixing a physio prehab exercise with some side plank variations. So I'll show you from this side, come up and through, open and close, keep that hand flat, try and push through the fingers, try and stay over through the shoulder, opening and closing the hip. We're going to go round to our back, work to some resisted hip flexor. One of my favourite ways to get in, this would be a great running prep if you're going to run and you've got floor space before you run, to get in, because we're going to activate the hip in a great way, as well as if you're doing any lower body work. So after you get warm, you're going to keep your lower back flat in the floor, no gap there. Drive the knee in and push away with your hand. Try and drive the knee as high up as possible before you then create that resistance, because we're trying to get stronger in our end range. Remember, this position is a lunge or a squat or a split squat. So we're trying to work on that active pulling our knee in. This is also our running stride, lifting our knee up towards our chest without any flexion in our lumbar spine, without any rounding forwards. If you feel the want to drive your head up, you can, but I would encourage you just to relax it so we can work our lower abdominals and our hip flexor more than the upper part or of our abdominals. And down. We'll do one more. And then we'll lift up. We're going to activate that hip a little bit more now. So we're going to be in a kind of triangle with the hands at a right angle here, and the foot's going to be out to the side. If this is quite hard to get that lift off, then you can always bend the knee and come into kind of a dog peeing on a lamppost position, I call it. But try and be in one straight line, lift, hold, down, lift, hold, down. Even better if you have a wall, because you can jam your hip and hand into it and resist the compensation of leaning away. So you can really work on that position to try and activate the outside of the hip, up and pause down, up and pause down. I haven't been counting because I can't talk and count all at the same time. So around about 10 to 15, show you from the other angle, other side, lift, down, lift, down, good, lift. I'm going to keep going. I'll try and count this time. So we're trying to feel it all the way through this outside hip position. We're trying to warm up and prime the hip in all angles, all directions, to make sure you're nice and primed. Cool, I would do one more round of each if you were prepping. We're now going to go to the inside of the thigh, the adductor. So you can start on your hand, I'll show you both variations. So you can start on the hand, and we're just going to push flat into the floor, and we're going to open the shoulder. You can come down onto the elbow, which is tougher for most people. I'll do the first round like this. So we're just going to hold, pushing through, same thing, no anti-rotation, but now the stability to the inside. Anyone who has groin tweaks and stuff, when you squat, when you run, so they're great little prep exercise. If this is easy, you can create a little bit of challenge by moving this foot around to decrease, well, increase the movement and decrease the stability, but increase the demand of that hip. We'll do the other side, everything in a straight line, hip come forwards, push into the top of the foot and just hold, keep the chest nice and open, push through the hand and just push down. You can do this with your foot on a bench, for example. You can support the knee. If you have knee pain, you can do it so the bench is above the knee so it's not pulling potentially on that MCL or meniscus. But this is a great variation of a side plank that's often overlooked. I'll go with on the other side with the elbow down. I find this really good if I'm going to do any running or any changes of direction. It just helps the stability aspect. And like I said, you can move this foot around. You can actually start to get that hip flexor to work as well if you want that extra challenge. Otherwise, just stay still. Good, 20 or 30 seconds on each side. That might be a bit less, but trying to talk and demonstrate is a little challenging. It's the same thing, push through. I like keeping that hand flat. One of the courses I went on, DNS talked about children with cerebral palsy often trying to create internal rotation for stability, and it's good for us to be able to keep our palm open, stay connected to the floor. Cool, we're going to go into our last thing, which is just going to be some mountain climber variations. So we're going to start off in a plank position, and we're just going to now activate that position and activate our core to drive our knee into our elbows. We're trying not to round and drive up too much. We're trying to stay nice and flat and just work on that hip flexor. Doesn't matter if you don't touch. We're going to try and get that shoulder and hip talking to each other a bit. Good, and have a little rest. We're then going to go into a diagonal pattern. So we're going to come through and we're going to diagonal, back, diagonal. So we're creating a bit of a transverse type movement, a diagonal connection through our hip and our shoulder and our midline, our core. And you might want to do 10 to 20 of those. And the last thing I'm going to squeeze in, you can do a couple rounds of that, is our bird dog position. So we're going to go one leg out and up. And if you want to, you can also release the opposite hand, and we're just going to hold. That toe can be tucked for a bit more stability, or you can flatten that toe for a bit more of a challenge. I'm going to hold 5 to 10 seconds before switching sides. I like to move the foot first, lower back, so we're not arching too much. We're trying to stay relatively neutral in that lumbar spine, reaching up, and we're going to hold 5 to 10 seconds and come down. Same thing, other side, up and hold, and come down, up and hold. If you are going to use this before like squat prep or run prep, remember, you still need to do some specific warm-ups in terms of adding maybe some calf work in, some dynamic stuff in, some things that actually want the pattern. But this is great in terms of getting the core, even the shoulder and the hips to all start to link together in a nice strong kinetic chain, so you should feel quite stable when you then go into your heel flicks, your lunges, everything like that. Thanks for joining me today. If you've got any questions, let me know.